What happens when a simple power outage reveals wealthy families that has secret? Third us air, we discover how one woman uncovered an 11-year lie. Look in her basement and show ultimate service. Let's get started.
My parents were enjoying a luxurious vacation in Hawaii when a sudden power outage completely changed my life. My name is Kennedy. I am 26 years old, living in a seemingly perfect house in Cary, North Carolina. Most people discover their family's darkest secrets through a misplaced letter, but I discovered mine through a locked steel door hidden in my own basement. I always believed I grew up in a loving home until a simple electrical fault exposed an 11-year-old lie that destroyed everything I knew. Before I tell you exactly what was breathing behind that locked door, please do me a quick favor by subscribing to the channel. A lot of people watch our videos without subscribing, but doing so costs you absolutely nothing while meaning the world to us. Hit that like button while you are at it. Drop your thoughts in the comments after listening because you are going to be absolutely shocked by this. This nightmare began on a quiet afternoon when the main electrical panel malfunctioned while I was home alone. I called the local electrician Nolan to fix the blown fuses right away so the heating system would turn back on. He went straight down the stairs to the basement control board while I waited comfortably in the living room upstairs. Less than an hour later, my phone rang with a call from him, his voice trembling with a mixture of confusion along with pure panic. "Ma'am, there's a locked door in the basement. Is someone inside?" "What door? We don't have any locked rooms." "I hear breathing, and there are locks outside." My initial denial vanished completely when he described those exterior padlocks in detail, leaving me with absolutely no time to hesitate before hanging up the phone to dial 911 for an immediate emergency response. Exactly 10 minutes later, the piercing wails of approaching police sirens violently tore through our quiet, gated community. 2 county patrol cars aggressively pulled into the driveway before 4 armed officers rushed directly toward the basement entrance. I nervously guided the lead officer down the wooden stairs after explaining the terrifying phone call from the electrician. The officers immediately surrounded the heavy steel door, cleverly concealed directly behind a massive wooden storage shelf. One officer retrieved heavy industrial bolt cutters from his equipment bag to deal with the unnatural barrier. It took agonizing minutes of intense physical effort to snap the rusted padlock securing the outside metal frame. The loud metallic cracks echoed sharply against the cold concrete walls as each heavy lock finally dropped to the floor. The lead officer forcefully kicked the heavy steel door inward to reveal the hidden space behind the storage area. A suffocating wave of thick, musty air instantly assaulted our lungs as the heavy door swung completely open. The windowless room presented a dilapidated environment lacking basic human necessities or proper oxygen ventilation. A plastic tray containing molding leftover food sat carelessly discarded in the center of the cold concrete floor. The atmosphere felt incredibly suffocating because the reality of a hidden cage inside my childhood home materialized. The primary officer slowly swept his powerful tactical flashlight across the damp walls toward the deepest shadowed corner. The bright beam illuminated an incredibly frail elderly woman lying motionless upon a heavily stained rectangular mattress. Her emaciated frame looked practically skeletal beneath a thin gray blanket, providing absolutely no warmth against the basement chill. She was taking incredibly shallow breaths with her frail chest barely moving under the harsh illumination of the tactical lights. The officers quickly holstered their weapons before urgently requesting an emergency medical rescue team through their shoulder communication radios. I cautiously stepped closer to the makeshift bed as my entire body trembled uncontrollably with pure adrenaline. Looking down at the fragile woman, I initially saw an entirely unfamiliar face marked by deep wrinkles, along with severe malnourishment. Her hollow cheeks combined with her sunken eyes created a terrifying visage, causing extreme confusion within my racing mind. I stood there frozen in a prolonged moment of absolute hesitation, trying to comprehend the identity of this stranger. It made absolutely no logical sense for an unknown elderly person to be secretly imprisoned beneath my own living room. "Ma'am, do you have any idea who this person is?" the lead officer asked while checking the woman's weak pulse. "I have absolutely no idea who she is or how she got down here," I answered with genuine confusion. However, my eyes suddenly locked onto a very specific detail when her right arm slipped out from beneath the blanket. A distinct crescent moon-shaped birthmark rested perfectly visible right upon the inner skin of her fragile right wrist. That highly unique pigmentation mark triggered an overwhelming flood of childhood memories, completely shattering my previous denial. I stared wildly at the birthmark before letting out a horrified gasp as the impossible truth finally became clear. This dying prisoner was definitely my grandmother Thelma, whom I loved dearly during my early childhood years. A devastating psychological shock delivered a fatal blow to my sanity as an 11-year-old memory forcefully resurfaced. I vividly remembered standing under a black umbrella because my parents organized a highly formal closed-casket funeral for my grandmother. My parents had explicitly claimed she died from a sudden heart failure before vehemently refusing to let anyone see her body. The emergency medical technicians rushed down the stairs carrying a heavy stretcher to transport the severely malnourished victim to the hospital. I stood completely paralyzed against the cold wall, watching the paramedics carry my supposedly deceased grandmother out of the basement. The county police immediately began securing the entire property with bright yellow crime scene tape to initiate a massive kidnapping investigation. The following morning, long after the medical emergency team had taken her away, the house returned to a terrifyingly eerie silence. I remained persistently haunted by the ragged breathing echoing throughout the night, making sleep completely impossible, despite my sheer physical exhaustion. I grabbed a heavy flashlight before making the conscious decision to return down the wooden stairs toward the damp basement room to search for answers. Stepping back into that confined space felt incredibly suffocating while the reality of the situation continued settling heavily upon my racing mind. I began meticulously searching the perimeter before forcefully flipping over the heavily stained mattress to inspect the cold concrete flooring underneath. I noticed a subtle inconsistency in the masonry work, where one specific brick seemed slightly elevated compared to the surrounding foundation. My flashlight beam caught the dull reflection of metal hidden cleverly beneath that loose rectangular floorboard near the darkest corner. I pried the heavy stone away to extract an old rusted tin box containing dozens of neatly folded pharmacy receipts. Scanning the faded ink on the crumpled papers revealed continuous bulk purchases of high-dosage sedatives dating back over a decade. The sheer volume of these chemical suppressants indicated a highly systematic effort to keep the victim constantly incapacitated. I immediately secured the metal container into my bag before driving straight toward the county police precinct to deliver the physical evidence. I placed the rusted box directly onto the metal desk belonging to the lead investigator inside the crowded precinct room. Detective Griffin carefully examined the faded pharmacy receipts, using transparent gloved hands while a grim expression slowly formed across his hardened face. He methodically arranged the chronological timeline of the purchases upon his desk before looking up at me with profound seriousness. "This is definitely not a standard kidnapping situation, because this hidden room was methodically prepared a very long time ago," Detective Griffin stated firmly while placing the receipts into plastic evidence bags. "What exactly do you mean by that? Are you suggesting somebody inside my own family intentionally imprisoned her down there?" I replied with a violently trembling voice. "That is exactly the terrifying reality we must clarify right now," he responded while pulling out a thick manila folder from his drawer. The detective thoroughly explained how we needed irrefutable proof regarding the falsified official documents filed with the county over a decade ago. He explicitly requested that I contact my best friend Chloe, who currently managed the digital archives at the Regional Medical Records Center. I immediately dialed her private number to explain the horrific situation while begging for her discreet assistance in accessing the restricted municipal database. Chloe promised to bypass the standard administrative protocols to manually retrieve the original death certificate submitted by my parents 11 years ago. We anxiously waited inside the precinct office for nearly 40 minutes until she finally faxed the requested documents directly to the secure police server. Detective Griffin closely compared the attending physician's signature on the faxed certificate against verified public medical records from the exact same year. The glaring visual discrepancies proved beyond any reasonable doubt that the hospital signature had been entirely forged to officially fake the death. He then presented a comprehensive financial background report detailing a massive family trust fund established shortly before her supposed passing. The rigid legal stipulations of that specific trust required an annual biometric voice verification process to authorize the continued distribution of the offshore funds. This chilling financial revelation exposed the exact reason why the perpetrators could not simply eliminate her to take the inheritance right away. They were absolutely forced to keep her alive within that concrete cage, simply to harvest her audio recordings to satisfy the strict banking requirements every single year. On a heavily overcast Wednesday afternoon, a yellow municipal taxi braked aggressively against the pristine front lawn of our massive gated property. My parents, alongside Mason, rushed frantically through the main double doors while perfectly executing their meticulously rehearsed roles as traumatized victims of a random home invasion. Their synchronized performance looked incredibly authentic to the untrained eye because they successfully manipulated the responding officers with fake tears. My mother immediately collapsed onto the expensive foyer bench, sobbing loudly about violated family security, while my father aggressively demanded immediate answers from the stationed patrol officers. Mason confidently stepped forward to pull me into a tight embrace, while projecting the highly convincing image of a fiercely protective older brother guarding his traumatized sibling. However, looking directly over his shoulder during that suffocating hug revealed a completely different story, because his anxious eyes kept darting nervously toward the dark basement corridor. His incredibly rigid physical posture completely contradicted his soothing tone as he practically dragged me away from the investigating police officers into the adjacent dining room for forced privacy. "Are you okay? We heard about the break-in from the security company, so we canceled our flight immediately to come straight home," Mason said while artificially stroking my hair. "I am perfectly fine, but last year, Mason, you claimed the basement plumbing pipes were severely broken. So how did you not discover that hidden room during your repairs?" I asked while defensively stepping backward out of his tight embrace. "Listen to me carefully, because you are clearly suffering from severe psychological shock right now. Do not open your mouth to tell the police any of this absolute nonsense, do you understand me?" Mason threatened, with a sudden terrifying shift replacing his previously concerned voice. The incredibly menacing tone dropping his protective facade completely solidified my horrifying realization that my own brother was an active accomplice in this decade-long torture. I respectfully nodded in fake compliance to lower his immediate suspicions before silently excusing myself toward the upstairs bathroom under the believable pretense of severe nausea. Waiting patiently at the top of the wooden staircase allowed me to observe my entire family becoming deeply engaged in a fabricated police interrogation within the downstairs living room. Seizing this perfect window of temporary distraction gave me the dangerous opportunity to slip completely unnoticed into my father's heavily restricted home office situated at the far end of the hallway. Approaching his massive oak desk required extreme physical silence to avoid alerting the armed officers stationed just a few yards down the main corridor. Knowing my father constantly misplaced his tiny brass key prompted me to retrieve a sturdy metal hairpin from my pocket to manually bypass the simple locking mechanism on his bottom drawer. Working the improvised metal tool deep into the brass keyhole took several agonizing minutes of blind manipulation until the internal tumblers finally gave way with a highly satisfying metallic click. Sliding the heavy wooden drawer completely open revealed a meticulously organized space containing a weathered leather-bound notebook hidden carefully beneath several thick stacks of blank printer paper. Opening the worn leather cover exposed hundreds of handwritten pages, documenting a precise chronological schedule detailing every single interaction with the captive prisoner trapped beneath our feet. The neat columns of black ink meticulously tracked her declining physical weight, alongside calculating the exact nutritional minimum required to prevent sudden organ failure. The chilling handwritten entries clearly designated specific calendar days for my mother to deliver the moldy food trays, while explicitly outlining Mason's scheduled duties for secretly administering the high-dosage sedatives. Holding this irrefutable physical evidence of their synchronized cruelty sent a massive wave of absolute disgust rushing through my entire body, while confirming my entire family was equally guilty. Slipping the damning notebook securely inside my jacket pocket became my absolute priority before carefully relocking the heavy wooden drawer to erase any traces of my unauthorized investigation. Later that weekend, I visited the strictly guarded intensive care unit of the Central Downtown Hospital. The steady rhythm of medical monitors provided a constant background noise, while two uniformed county officers stood firmly outside the thick glass doors to ensure absolute safety. My grandmother had finally surpassed the critical medical threshold to regain enough physical strength to speak about her agonizing ordeal without losing consciousness. Sitting beside her elevated hospital bed allowed me to clearly hear her frail whispers, detailing the absolute horror she experienced exactly 11 years ago inside our own home. She explicitly recounted the terrifying evening when my own father intentionally laced her nightly glass of warm milk with heavy sedatives before carrying her unconscious body downstairs. Her trembling voice painted a horrifying picture of extreme psychological torture, orchestrated directly by my mother over the past brutal decade of isolated captivity. She vividly described how my mother routinely carried discarded table scraps down the wooden basement stairs instead of providing proper nutritional meals for a living human being. My mother would maliciously stand outside the heavy steel door loudly whispering venomous curses while praying for the elderly woman to finally die so they could bypass the annoying voice verification system. "He drugged me then when I woke up. Everything around was just darkness," she whispered while gripping my hand with tears streaming down her hollow cheeks. "You keep this button, the police will need it to prove he was down there," she instructed while secretly slipping a small rigid object directly into my palm beneath the hospital blankets. Opening my fingers revealed a distinct silver-studded button completely torn from my father's expensive custom-tailored business suit many years ago. The metallic surface sustained heavy, unnatural scratches suggesting a violent physical struggle against the rough concrete basement walls during her initial captivity when she briefly fought back. More importantly, dark brown stains coating the jagged metal edges clearly indicated old dried blood, requiring immediate forensic DNA extraction at the Municipal Crime Laboratory. Securing this direct physical link to the crime scene became absolutely paramount for Detective Griffin to eventually build an airtight prosecution case against my ruthless parents. Fully recognizing the extreme danger posed by these highly educated sociopaths hiding behind their wealthy suburban facade required immediate proactive surveillance measures to effectively trap them. Their ability to smoothly lie to the investigating detectives earlier proved they possessed the manipulative skills necessary to potentially evade a standard criminal inquiry through expensive lawyers. I immediately left the hospital premises to visit an obscure electronic surveillance shop located completely across the county lines to avoid generating any local suspicion whatsoever. Purchasing a military-grade micro-listening device equipped with extended battery life provided the exact technological advantage needed to monitor their private conversations entirely undetected. The knowledgeable sales clerk instructed me on properly linking the hidden microphone to an encrypted application on my personal smartphone to establish a secure live audio feed. I waited patiently until midnight before creeping into our massive unlit garage, where the primary family vehicle remained parked in total darkness after their stressful afternoon interrogation. Crawling underneath the heavy luxury SUV required absolute silence while navigating the greasy undercarriage to locate a secure magnetic mounting point near the steel transmission block. I firmly attached the tiny audio transmitter directly above the rear suspension arm, where visual detection remained practically impossible for anyone conducting a standard vehicle inspection. Testing the covert surveillance setup guaranteed I would secretly hear every single whisper between my parents whenever they believed they were securely isolated from the police presence. This desperate technological countermeasure represented my only viable strategy to capture their raw verbal confessions before they could legally finalize their impending escape plan. On Thursday evening, a heavy prolonged downpour violently battered the property while completely blurring the glass windows of the massive house. Sitting inside my locked bedroom with my headphones securely pressed against my ears allowed me to actively monitor the live audio feed, transmitting directly from the luxury vehicle. The encrypted application clearly captured a highly tense argument breaking out between my parents regarding their rapidly collapsing situation, while the heavy rain pounded relentlessly against the metal roof. I distinctly heard my father discussing a desperate logistical plan involving offshore wire transfers to immediately withdraw maximum cash reserves from their untraceable accounts to facilitate a permanent escape across the international border. They realized the forensic evidence collected from the basement would inevitably expose their massive financial fraud within a matter of days, causing them extreme psychological panic. Recognizing their imminent flight risk required me to orchestrate a psychological trap designed specifically to force an incredibly reckless mistake under extreme pressure. I utilized a secure wireless printer located inside my personal study to generate a highly convincing anonymous warning note, stating explicitly that the county police obtained a judge's warrant to forcibly search the hidden wall safe. Leaving this fabricated document partially exposed upon the polished mahogany dining room table guaranteed they would discover the terrifying warning immediately upon entering the house through the garage door. I retreated upstairs while actively monitoring the live video feed, streaming from a tiny infrared camera I previously concealed behind a decorative porcelain vase inside the living room earlier that afternoon. My parents alongside Mason rushed into the frame completely panicked after discovering the printed threat sitting upon the dining table. They practically tore the heavy landscape painting off the wall to access the steel combination dial hidden behind the artwork. They immediately began pulling thick stacks of original trust fund documents from the concealed wall safe in a frantic attempt to manually destroy the incriminating financial records before any authorities arrived. "Are you absolutely sure nobody saw us tonight? Because I keep feeling like someone is actively watching every single move inside this house," Mason asked with a noticeably tense voice. "Stop being so paranoid. Mason, just quickly clean up this massive pile of documents before the police actually arrive with their search warrant," my father yelled angrily while throwing papers onto the rug. "I swear there is something reflecting directly behind that porcelain vase over there," Mason stated suspiciously while aggressively stepping closer toward the exact position of my hidden recording device. My heart completely stopped beating inside my chest as Mason extended his right hand toward the hidden camera lens with absolute determination. Fortunately, a massive burst of bright orange flames violently erupted from the stone fireplace when my mother frantically tossed a massive bundle of dry legal documents directly onto the burning cedar logs. The sudden explosive heat alongside the blinding light successfully diverted his immediate attention away from the vase, just in time to prevent my catastrophic discovery. This incredibly lucky distraction provided the perfect unhindered angle for my hidden camera to flawlessly record them systematically destroying the original trust fund certificates in the roaring fire. Later that exact same night, I crept downstairs through the silent hallways, ensuring the wooden floorboards avoided creaking to carefully extract the tiny memory card from the hidden surveillance equipment. I locked myself securely inside my bedroom before transferring the massive high-definition video files alongside the vehicle audio recordings directly onto my personal encrypted computer drive. I immediately composed a highly secure electronic message containing all the digital evidence before routing the files directly to Detective Griffin through a heavily encrypted municipal police server. Sending that critical email officially sealed their fate by providing law enforcement with the irrefutable proof required to execute an immediate tactical raid. Early Friday morning, the temperature dropped significantly, while deep darkness still enveloped the entire massive mansion. Starting right after midnight, heavily armed federal tactical teams alongside Detective Griffin completely secured the perimeter. They systematically established an invisible surveillance net, enclosing every single exit point across the massive property. The highly trained agents executed their stealth maneuvers flawlessly, ensuring nobody inside the fortified house suspected the impending raid. They utilized advanced thermal imaging drones hovering silently above the roof to track the internal movements of the suspects preparing for their escape. Inside a specialized mobile command unit parked several blocks away, forensic technicians finalized their urgent electronic analysis. The digital experts officially verified the absolute authenticity regarding the intercepted vehicle audio files, along with the infrared video capturing the document destruction. Furthermore, rapid laboratory testing conclusively matched the dried blood samples extracted from the silver suit button directly to my father, establishing the final piece of irrefutable physical evidence needed for immediate federal intervention. The prosecuting attorney reviewing the real-time evidence immediately authorized the execution of high-risk federal warrants. The tense silence broke violently when the heavily armored tactical unit breached the heavy oak front doors using a massive steel battering ram. The explosive entry instantly flooded the expansive foyer with blinding tactical lights cutting through the early morning gloom. Splintered wood flew across the marble tiles as dozens of agents swarmed the interior space with military precision. My parents, alongside Mason, were caught entirely off guard while attempting to carry several heavy suitcases down the main hallway toward the garage. They were actively fleeing the jurisdiction before the authorities intercepted their cowardly departure tonight. Freeze right there, because this is the FBI. Put your hands on your head and step back slowly. Detective Griffin shouted aggressively while aiming his service weapon directly at their chests. The sudden, overwhelming police presence caused absolute panic among the three conspirators standing completely frozen in the brightly lit hallway. You have the wrong people because we are the actual victims here, Kennedy. You need to say something right now. My mother screamed hysterically while dropping a heavy leather suitcase that burst open to reveal thick stacks of stolen cash. The banded $100 bills spilled carelessly across the expensive flooring, exposing their undeniable guilt. I slowly descended the wooden staircase while staring directly into her terrified eyes with absolute emotional detachment. I felt absolutely zero sympathy for the manipulative criminals who had subjected my grandmother to a decade of unimaginable torment beneath our feet. Do not ever call my name again, because everything is finally over, I replied with a completely cold tone. Detective Griffin stepped forward to secure their wrists using heavy steel handcuffs while officially declaring the federal arrest mandates. His loud, authoritative voice echoed throughout the foyer as he systematically listed their horrific crimes for the official record. He formally charged all three suspects with prolonged unlawful imprisonment, aggravated elder abuse, alongside orchestrating a massive federal financial fraud scheme crossing multiple state lines. The brutal physical reality of their permanent downfall finally shattered their arrogant psychological facades completely. My parents, alongside Mason, violently struggled against the restraining officers while screaming desperately for any legal assistance. They completely lost their sophisticated, wealthy composure while thrashing wildly toward the massive front exit. I simply stood firmly upon the elevated wooden stairs with my arms tightly crossed across my chest. My eyes remained completely devoid of any pity while watching the federal agents drag my former family members outside toward the waiting armored transport vehicles. The heavy metal doors slamming shut on the transport trucks officially severed my toxic bloodline forever, leaving behind nothing but the quiet emptiness of the secured crime scene. Exactly 6 months later, the incredibly stifling central courtroom of the state Supreme Court hosted the final dramatic chapter of this horrific ordeal, bringing an official end to my prolonged psychological suffering. The highly publicized criminal trial produced an incredibly tense atmosphere, featuring a fierce direct confrontation between the diligent jury members, the aggressive defense attorneys, and the individuals I once considered my trusted family. The absolute deciding climax of the extensive legal proceedings occurred when my grandmother Thelma bravely approached the wooden witness stand, despite requiring a specialized medical wheelchair for basic mobility. She confidently delivered an ironclad verbal testimony explicitly detailing the inhumane cruelty orchestrated directly by her own son and his willing accomplices over the past 11 years of forced captivity. Her devastating first-hand account combined flawlessly with the undeniable forensic evidence to completely dismantle the expensive legal defense presented by their highly paid corporate lawyers. The presiding judge struck his heavy wooden gavel with absolute authority before delivering maximum sentences to ensure permanent public safety against these manipulative sociopaths who betrayed their own flesh. He officially sentenced my parents to life in federal prison without any possibility of parole, while simultaneously condemning Mason to a mandatory 20-year sentence behind heavy steel bars. Watching the heavily armed bailiffs physically drag my screaming parents and brother out of the courtroom provided a profound sense of absolute closure that I desperately needed to move forward. I successfully completed the complex legal procedures to officially take over the executive management of the massive family trust fund immediately following the final courtroom verdict. Securing this vast financial power allowed me to effortlessly relocate my grandmother into the most luxurious private nursing facility available within the entire state to ensure her peaceful recovery. Furthermore, I finalized the necessary legal paperwork to permanently sever all remaining blood ties with those convicted criminals, leaving them to rot entirely forgotten inside their cold concrete prison cells. Representing the production team of this channel, we officially affirm this narrative serves a strictly educational purpose for our loyal viewers. Our primary goal involves conveying crucial messages regarding personal boundaries, alongside handling severe family crises utilizing pure logic and strict legal frameworks. Objectively evaluating this traumatic situation reveals exactly how the female protagonist decisively protected her own safety by initiating a permanent severance from her highly toxic relatives. The convicted antagonists ultimately suffered the completely inevitable legal consequences directly resulting from their own greed-driven decisions alongside their horrific criminal actions against a vulnerable victim. Looking back at this devastating family nightmare reveals several profound lessons regarding human nature, alongside the establishment of absolute moral boundaries. First, toxic greed possesses the terrifying power to completely destroy basic family affections, effortlessly transforming supposedly educated individuals into ruthless monsters capable of burying their own parents alive for financial gain. Second, the pristine, glamorous facade of wealthy high society families frequently serves as the perfect camouflage to securely conceal the darkest criminal atrocities from the unsuspecting public eye. Finally, maintaining profound self-respect requires you to completely sever ties with manipulative abusers, regardless of shared bloodlines, because true justice will eventually shatter the deepest concrete vaults to drag the undeniable truth directly into the blinding sunlight. We sincerely thank every single viewer who patiently listened to the conclusion of this highly realistic family drama, because your continued support helps our storytelling community grow stronger. How exactly would you handle this terrifying discovery if you suddenly found yourself standing in the protagonist's position? Please share your honest thoughts in the comments below, and remember to subscribe to our channel today.
Câu chuyện trên được xây dựng hoàn toàn dưới dạng hư cấu, phác họa một bi kịch gia đình đầy ám ảnh và cực đoan. Nhân vật nữ chính đã vô tình phát hiện ra bí mật kinh hoàng bị chôn giấu dưới chính ngôi nhà của mình, từ đó buộc phải đối mặt với sự thật tàn nhẫn về những người thân ruột thịt. Tình huống bà nội bị giam giữ suốt nhiều năm cho thấy lòng tham có thể đẩy con người vượt qua mọi ranh giới đạo đức. Đặc biệt chi tiết gia đình tổ chức tang lễ giả và che giấu tội ác trong thời gian dài là minh chứng rõ ràng cho việc vỏ bọc hoàn hảo có thể đánh lừa cả xã hội. Từ góc nhìn khách quan, hành động, hợp tác với cảnh sát và kiên quyết đối mặt sự thật của nữ chính là lựa chọn đúng đắn. Dù vô cùng đau đớn, điều này nhấn mạnh rằng sự an toàn và công lý luôn phải đặt lên trên tình cảm cá nhân. Câu chuyện đặt ra nhiều bài học, không nên mù quáng tin tưởng, cần giữ ranh giới cá nhân rõ ràng và dũng cảm lên tiếng trước cái sai. Nếu bạn ở trong hoàn cảnh đó, bạn sẽ làm gì? Hãy chia sẻ quan điểm của bạn và cùng thảo luận nhé!